Hi guys, hope you're all doing fantastic. Thanks for all your love and support to our channel, Everyday Life. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please click on the subscribe button and press the like button and click on the bell button to make sure you're updated with all our new videos. Let's look at the different parts of a bow and how to measure your bow length, how to measure your draw length, and how to decide what is the right kind of bow for you. This is the recurve bow, the most standard bow used in the archery today. And this I do bare bow archery, so I don't use the balancers and the weights and all things and all the other things. I prefer having a bow as bare as possible. That's the kind of archery I like, but that's a personal preference. So, what are the main parts of a bow? The main parts of a bow are the riser, which is the center part, which is usually made of metal, which starts from here to here. The riser length is measured by measuring from this point here until this point here. So that's the length of a riser. It's made of metal, and the riser is where all the accessories and everything will fit in. Okay. The next thing that you have is the limb of the bow. The limb of a bow is the wooden and the metal combination that you would have on the top. So that's a top limb and that's a bottom limb. You have two limbs for a bow. So the limbs are always detachable. They get attached here in the bow, and of course, because the bow is strung up now, you will not be able to remove it. But once the bow is unstrung and the string is loose, then you will be able to easily remove the limbs of the bow and pack it up. So the length of the riser less the length of the limbs is what makes the length of the bow. Of course, there is some overlap. You don't have to worry too much about what length of the limbs and what length of the riser that you need to buy. As long as you know the length of the bow that you need to buy, your store or wherever you go to purchase, they would be able to guide you through that. So how do you decide what is the right length of the bow for you? The length of the bow depends upon the draw length that you have. The draw length is the key factor in deciding the bow length that you have, the arrow length that you're going to use. Okay. So how do you measure the bow length? The bow length is measured from one tip of the bow to the other tip of the bow when the bow is not strung up. Again, when the bow is not strung up. So what is the right length for you? For that, you need to measure yourself up. When you stretch your arms both ways and measure from one tip of the middle finger to the other tip of the middle finger fully stretched. Okay, once you have that measurement, for example, mine is 75 inches. Once you have that measurement, then divide it by 2.5. So 75 inches divided by 2.5, that's 30 inches. That's my draw length. And draw length is very key in deciding the size of the bow that you need to buy. So the chart that I have given here explains you different bow lengths that can accommodate for different draw lengths. So depending upon which draw length that you're falling under, you need to pick up that bow length for yourself. So apart from bow length, what is the next most important thing in a bow is the bow weight. The bow weight is key in when it comes to shooting the arrows out. So the bow weight, as a common misconception, is that the more the bow weight, the more distance the arrow would go. That's wrong. The more the bow weight, the more velocity the arrow would leave from the bow. That's all it is. Bow weight usually ranges from 25 pounds bow to up to a 45, even 55 and a 65 pounds bow. But you don't have to choose a 65-pound bow for an arrow to go to the longest distance. Even in Olympics, where they shoot around 70 meters distance, the bow that they use is only 25 pounds bow, and sometimes it's 35 pounds bow. Even with that weightage of bow, you can shoot long distances. What is important is to pick the right kind of poundage that's right for you, because when you're practicing archery, you're going to do this at least 100 to 120 times a day. And each and every time you do that, it's very important that your hand is firm, your arm is not waving up and down, and you should be able to balance it each and every time. So to do that, it's very important that you pick the weight of the bow. When I say weight, it's the strength of the bow that you can handle, that your muscles can pull back and hold steadily, and that's most important. So ideally for my weight, I use a 35 pounds bow, which is very good. I bought a 45-pound bow initially. I was under the misconception that the 45-pound bow would help in keeping my arrows more straight, more distant and all that. But in the end, after practicing for a few days, I hurt my back really bad, and I decided I have to reduce the poundage of my bow. And 35 pounds bow I've been using nearly for a year now, and it is really good, and my arrows are still going straight and onto the target. as you can see. So now you know how to measure the bow, how to measure your draw length. So you know what size of bow is right for you. What are the other parts of the bow? Arrow rest. There are different types of arrow rests. There are metal arrow rests and there are plastic arrow rests. Usually, the metal arrow rests are used more common in the industry, but personally, when I used it, I have noticed that the arrows slip down from the metal arrow rest. It could probably be my technique that's wrong, but I over time have somehow liked the plastic arrow rests. The only problem with the plastic ones is they get rubbed off after a few months, and then you need to probably change your arrow rest. But that doesn't worry me because the arrow rest only cost probably £1 or £2 for each one. So once you have your arrow rest, then other thing that you need is a plunger. That's the plunger. It can be unscrewed from your bow and it can be screwed again. So, and the most important action of the plunger is this spring action that it gives. As you can see, that spring action is what helps to keep your arrows straight. So what does a plunger do? A plunger helps in keeping the arrow leave straight from your bow. When you release the arrow from your bow, it leaves with immense amount of force, which makes the arrow bend when it leaves the bow. So if you have a bow like this, and when you shoot an arrow, if you don't have a plunger, the arrow, because of the strength of the arrow of the bow, the arrow naturally goes towards this direction. But what a plunger does, it immediately kicks in. It pushes the spring action. With the spring action, it corrects the arrow again onto the straight path. So this really helps in keeping your arrows from shooting left every time. So a plunger is really important if you want to keep your arrows straight and consistent throughout each and every time. And it is also that sometimes when you shoot, the arrows bend this way, and sometimes when you shoot, the arrows bend this way. So either way, whichever way the arrow bends, the plunger helps in correcting the path and then keeping the arrow leaving straight from your bow. So that's the use of a plunger, and it is really important to invest in a good plunger. It costs around £20 for a really good plunger, and it would help you to group your arrows into one common place so that your arrows are not all over the place on the board. The next part when it comes to a bow is the bowstring. The bowstring plays a very major role. It is very important that you invest in a good quality bowstring. If it's not of good quality, it would stretch over time, and that would reduce the brace height of the bow. And when the brace height reduces, the strength of the bow reduces. So invest in a good bowstring. I use a DACRON one, which is quite steady. I've been using it for more than a year now, and this is quite steady and it never stretched. And another tip for you to remember is when your brace height increases or reduces, you can correct it by twisting your string, which makes the string shorter or longer and correct your brace height. It's important that you keep the brace height the same each and every time, and I suggest and advise you to keep checking your brace height once in a few weeks so that it doesn't change. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Please remember to subscribe to our channel so that we can bring before you more interesting videos and we can teach you more about archery. Thank you.